You are here for digital transformation, getting your salesforce to embrace the technology on their journey to omnichannel engagement. Now, this is a panel discussion on providing the roadmap to effective hybrid engagement with HCPs. And today we're going to be looking at the underlying reasons for Salesforce resistance to change. We'll also discuss some of the key steps needed to encourage a change in behavior. And we will look at how to change the mindset and how to create new omnichannel habits. And last but not least, we'll hear from Norgine, who actually achieved behavioural change and increased HCP digital engagement. Now, I can see you're all trickling in at the moment, so very warm welcome to you. You are here for a webinar that will last for around 30 minutes, and we should have 10 minutes for a Q&A at the end. So I think we are just about ready to begin. So as you can see, joining us at the moment, we have Sebastien, Noel, who is a Director of Multichannel Strategy at Veeva Systems, Clare Bryant, Head of Sales Training at Leo Pharma, Koen, who is the Global Associate Director of Field Force Effectiveness at Norgine, and finally, Mehrnaz Campbell, who is the CEO and Founding Director of Cheemia Reset. Now, this is our panel discussion on digital transformation and achieving a behavioural shift within the sales force. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has really accelerated digital transformation within the pharma industry. And in this webinar, we would like to focus on just how digital transformation is affecting the sales force. So we do have our expert panel here to share their insights on this very topic. Right now, we're going to go around the room and just ask our panel members to introduce themselves briefly. So let's kick off with you, Sebastien.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm Sebastien Noel. I'm the multi-channel strategy lead for Veeva in Europe. And well, basically, yes, I started working on digital with pharma companies about 10 years ago. I've always had a strong focus on digital engagement and what I would call hybrid models. So to make a simple definition of hybrid models, I would say it's really the mix of face-to-face interactions and digital engagement you can have with your customers and with your field teams, right? That would be really a simple definition to start. Very happy to be with you today. Thank you for the invitation. And this is going to be a very exciting discussion, I believe.
Sebastien, thank you. And to you, Clare.
Thank you, Zara. Afternoon, everybody. So I'm Clare Bryant. I head up sales training at Leo Pharma in the European region. And essentially, it's helping commercial colleagues to be really effective in their interactions with customers, regardless of what channel they're using. I've just had my 5-year anniversary at Leo. I can't believe I've also had my 20-year anniversary in Pharma. So back in the day, quite a few years spent at Pfizer and AbbVie as well. And I guess my passion is learning and specifically helping people to be really good at what they do. And I'm also really curious about what influences people's behaviour and gets them to change. So I look forward to the discussion today.
Some big milestones there, Clare, thank you. And now to you, Koen.
Thank you, Zara, and welcome everybody. So my name is Koen Janssens. I'm the Associate Director of Field Force Effectiveness in Norgine. I started in '92, so that's the Jurassic Park of digital industry. So I must say I have seen a very fast evolving pharma market, and my job is to make people, so our commercial field force, engaging with our customers in the most efficient way as we can do nowadays. So that's like earlier, a blend between in-person and remote engagement. So the pharma industry is evolving so fast so that my job gets, I would say, more interesting, more engaging, but also more fun for this moment, because it's a lot of a world full of opportunities right now there. So looking forward to the discussion.
Koen, thank you so much. And finally, Mehrnaz.
Hi, Zara. I'm Mehrnaz Campbell, and I help pharmaceutical sales team confidently engage healthcare professionals remotely. And I've achieved that by helping sales team embrace digital tools through our remote sales engagement training platform. Like Koen, I've been involved in the pharmaceutical industry for 29 years, so I'm there with you, Koen. And prior to that, I was actually starting my career as a nurse. Cheemia was set up as a remote company way before the pandemic, and we are expert in achieving market access and driving exponential sales using omnichannel engagement with HCPs, mostly done remotely. So we've been expert in remote omnichannel engagement since 2016. I'm quite excited to be with the panel and share our learning with our audience.
Mehrnaz, thank you very much. And it's so great to meet all of our panel, but we do have our first question to kick us off, and that is going to you, Sebastien. Now, you work across Europe and you have observed, obviously, many companies' digital transformation, but what really are the challenges you've observed in the Salesforce use of digital tools for HCP engagement?
Yes, it's a great question. Thank you for asking. And yes, as I said, I've worked in this space for about 10 years now, and I have a real passion for trying to help also people to move to digital, and also in this hybrid mix with face-to-face interactions and digital and remote engagement. And I would say that during the past 10 years already, even pre-pandemic, I was able to see people reacting typically in 4 different ways when they face change. And I think this is something we see with most people or human beings. When you face change, it's not always easy, right? So you could be critic. This is what we call the critic person. And you tend to disagree, right? You say, oh, no, I'm not sure this is true. This is probably wrong. I oppose this. I don't want to do it. That's the first way we saw typically. The second way to react usually is also about being afraid. So you can be a victim typically. So after the critic, you have the victim, right? I panic. I'm not sure that this is something I can do. I feel overwhelmed. And you had also a lot of people, in the field force of the pharma companies are feeling in this way also during quite a long time when you bring digital or new initiatives. You have also a third way to react. You can be a bystander, what we call a bystander. The bystander avoids getting involved, right? I will wait. This is not something for me, and basically I will wait for this to happen, or maybe to stop, because this is maybe something just passing like a new trend that was brought by someone, and this I don't want to feel involved at all. And finally, more importantly, maybe you have also the change navigator. So you have also, of course, unfortunately, people feeling just excited about the change because they like change, because they like to see things evolving and changing. These people tend to be positive, right? When you do something new, there will be also resilience, and they can also show the way to the other people and the other profiles, I would say, or people reacting in different ways. Basically, this is what we've seen, and I've seen for the past 10 years, I believe, when I was bringing remote engagement and new digital initiatives in the industry to the pharma companies. The pandemic, I think, changed also a few things, because it's more difficult today to oppose or to deny that something has changed. Digital is here to stay. We are using it every day, and this is already the case today with this webinar. So it's more difficult to be critic. I would say you need to accept it. That's a fact. It's really happening. It's also more difficult, or I guess maybe better in a way you can't really be a victim, because most people, and this is the case, of course, in the pharma companies with the field force, they tend to do things remotely. They have no choice if they want to, of course, keep contact with the healthcare professionals and their customers. So it's not the same, right? I feel less overwhelmed. I use different remote tools also to do my job from time to time. That's kind of okay. But I would say that the real challenge for the pharma companies today will remain with the 2 last ways of reacting, because you have still change navigators, which is great. These people will keep moving forward and pushing, of course, some of the trends to do digital and make sure that this really makes sense also for them and for the healthcare professionals. But you have also people who tend to become more and more bystanders. So I'm just waiting. We will see what happens. And I'm not sure I have to do something right now. Maybe it's not the right time. I will just wait that, the pandemic ends and we will see what happens next. Maybe I can just go back to business as usual. And this is something that is a real challenge. I guess when I speak with some leaders today, from the pharma companies, they tell me The most difficult for us is to make sure that we change this mindset, right? We don't want people to wait. We want to make sure that people will feel more in control and will move to something better for them, but also for the healthcare professional, for their customers, which is not always easy, because when you think about it, during the pandemic, and here I'm thinking about the last 18 months, basically, when we started with all the lockdowns in Europe, a lot of pharma companies just decided, not all of them, fortunately, but quite a few of them decided to enable technology. And this is great. We have good technology. We can really contact people remotely in an easy way today, but it's not enough. You need also to make sure that you have this digital behavioral shift happening. Otherwise, the mindset is not here. And it's difficult for the field teams and for the people, including all of us, right, to do this change. It takes time. You probably need some new skills as well. And this is something that more and more pharma companies are realizing today. Okay, technology is here, but what do we do next? How do we make sure that our people feel empowered and feel actually good with this new way of engaging with healthcare professionals? So that's something that I really see, and I would love to understand also, of course, what the other speakers are thinking about this today.
Sebastien, thank you very much. It feels like a very important place to begin to discuss the psychology. So that brings us to Clare. Now, Clare, you have recently started the process of digital transformation at Leo Pharma. Does this challenge to behavioural shift sound familiar to you? Is it something that you're dealing with just now, and how are you coping with it?
Yeah, absolutely it does, Zara. And a lot of what Sebastien has talked about really resonates. So yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is, you know, the whole coronavirus situation accelerated a digital transformation that we were trying to work with anyway. And that gave us a reason for doing it. But what I find really interesting now is, as different markets are now in different places, what we're seeing is different behavior again. So we're seeing some markets where it's more embedded now as part of the norm, and countries are using that as part of their mix. But what we also see are some other markets where they want to go back to the comfort zone of face-to-face, and perhaps haven't fully bought into the fact that, like you say, it's here to stay and will be part of the mix going forward. I think, Sebastien, what you said about the different reactions to the technology and the tools is really, really interesting. And I guess from my preferences, I always come at it from the people aspect and think, well, if I'm a representative in the field and I've got all these different tools and methodologies and systems coming down the line, why am I going to use them? You know, what's in it for me? How easy is it for me to navigate all these different aspects? And how's it going to make my job easier and more effective? So I tend to come back to thinking about our internal end users actually, and thinking, you know, have we done a good enough job of giving them the vision of the future? Have we done a good enough job of explaining where we see their role going and improving and getting more exciting in the future? Because you're right, I think without that, there's a lot of fear, and we can be nervous that we're going to be replaced by technology, we're going to be replaced by systems. And actually, I've done a lot of reading around the subject external to my own organisation. And, you know, if you do the research, what it says is the human factor is more important than ever before. You can have the best products, the best systems, but if you haven't got the skills to execute and you haven't got that human factor to deliver, you're not going to be successful. So for me, that's a really exciting part of the blend going forward. And I think that's the picture that we have to really paint for our colleagues internally, to show them how it all fits together. Because I think in the absence of that, you can get some cynicism, you might get some fear, you will certainly have some going back to old habits, you know. And I think the role and how the role of the representative and other field-based roles are evolving is really exciting, and the skills aspect becomes more important than ever before. So I'm passionate about that. So I'm really excited. You know, I'd be honest, maybe a couple of years ago in the world of training, I was also a bit cynical of, oh, it's all going to go online, it's all going to be virtual, they're not going to need people in training anymore. Again, what we see is, yes, there are changes to how we do things, but actually the skills and the connections and those relationships are fundamentally important going forward. And so what we've really got to do is do that piece of work on helping our colleagues see what's in it for them, giving them the new tools to help them get there. And as you say, really, really working on the mindset shift and supporting them to do that. And people will get there at different rates. But I think that's fundamental. So we need to focus on the whole picture together.
Claire, thank you so much. It's really important to hear about that human factor. It's a message we've heard throughout the pandemic and across the industries, which brings me to Mehrnaz. You know, you're a remote sales engagement trainer. What are some of the barriers to change for digital transformation, and sort of how would you advise companies to consider or what to do to achieve increased omni-channel engagement?
I think I'll echo what Sebastien and Claire illustrated and communicated so eloquently. I think what Claire said is so key. And from my perspective, there are three main barriers that pharmaceutical leaders need to address to achieve transformational change. The first one is the sales team are completely out of their comfort zone and they need help. If you think about it, the pandemic changed their role more fundamentally than any other role in our industry. And they're now expected to communicate through channels that they're frankly uncomfortable and have been avoiding it. And this hybrid role feels completely different to them compared to what they did before. The second barrier is transformation is a journey. You can't achieve it overnight. You can't expect to send your team on a course and they come back completely changed. You wouldn't expect someone who's new to driving to become a competent driver in a day. So in the same way, you need to give them time. You need to create a supportive environment where they can practice, make mistakes, and learn from it. And finally, the third barrier is organizational change and behavioral change happens at individual level. The individual representatives need to want to change and have a big enough why to change. And as they change individually in the right direction, the whole organization moves and shifts in that direction, and you achieve cultural change in the organization. So what can you do about these? There are three things you need to consider. I would say the first one is the sales team need to have a roadmap to navigate their way through this change. And the map needs to be based on their personal preferences and proven to work. Without a trusted roadmap, they're going to be completely lost. And an effective roadmap would have these components. It would be simple to use. It would be practical and give them results quickly. And it would come from a credible source that they can trust. And Claire talked about this briefly. This credibility is so key because there's a degree of skepticism about tools that are rolled out globally or regionally from senior leadership team to the sales force that have not really met their expectation. Our research showed that sales teams find corporate tools too clunky and not user-friendly. They love consumer tools like Uber, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, because they are personalized and they're fun to use. So the second thing I would suggest you consider is the senior management commitment and support is fundamental. In our experience of working with Norgine, we find that the level of support and commitment from the global team to the general managers in each country to the district sales managers was fundamental in their success. It allowed Norgine to coordinate the digital transformation across the whole global organization. Everybody was speaking the same language, the milestones were really clear, and there was a common understanding and an excitement about change and moving in that direction. And the third thing I would suggest you consider is training content and how you share it really matters. Based on our experience, we've developed core principles about content and methodology that could really accelerate the rate of transformation. And I'm going to share them with you. The training content works best if it's consumed and controlled by the individual. They need to feel you talking to them as an individual, not to a team or a group of people. The format needs to be fun and entertaining. And finally, the source of content and the trainer needs to be credible. You wouldn't get an orthopedic surgeon to teach someone to do cardiac surgery, right? So you need to get the trainer and content that are credible about remote sales engagement to make it work. So I hope that gives you an overview of the 3 recommendations I'll share with you. That is going to really accelerate the digital transformation.
Mehrnaz, thank you very much. Some fantastic tips and some great advice from you. Now, Koen, Mehrnaz did, of course, just reference Norgine and how you have achieved Salesforce effectiveness, but you were recently brought through that behavioural change training. And how has this impacted on your Salesforce and on your results?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for the question. And also, I can resonate all what have Sebastien said, Clare said, and Mehrnaz. I must say our world changed in March 22. We were used to just see our HCPs in person and only had face-to-face contacts. As of March 2020, the world stopped for a lot of, I would say, commercial field force, as they were frustrated. There was some resistance for them to accept the situation that they could no longer see their HCPs or their customers. So there was a kind of frustration, there was uncertainty, there was a little of anxiety as well, because some of them were thinking, this might be the end of my role, this might be the end of my job. So I might lose my job if I'm not able to see my customers. So we rapidly needed to find a solution, and installing the technology was not the issue. That was quite rapidly done. We could install Zoom on the CRM system. We had Veeva Engage activated, and we were, of course, scanning for different tools that could be used to contact our HCPs. So that for us was not the challenge. The challenge was to get it used and to get people over the barriers to contact their customers and start to engage in a very new way with their HCPs, which something they never have been doing, because that is not why they chose the role. They chose the role to be a commercial person, to see customers face to face. So it was a whole, I would say, different ball game, but not only from the side of the commercial field force. For us, it was very important to recognize that also for the HCP and our customer, this was a whole new experience. They needed also to get used to the system, to accept a remote engagement call and start to interact with our commercial field force in the same way. So we scanned the market, and we had a lot of offers in the market on training, and a lot of trainings were quite technical, quite, I would say, very superficial. And then we met the training program from Mehrnaz, so Reset and Reset Inspire, which really brought us into another atmosphere where people at their own pace got to know 44 videos, step by step explained in a very natural way that people could understand, because it reproduced the reality they were used to. So that was for us, I must say, a good step forward in training and engaging people, or at least motivating people to use the training program. And the fact that there was also a coaching program, Reset Inspire, for the district managers to coach their employees through this whole experience, it was a whole package. And I think we did well, because in the end, when we look to the last year, in a time where we had lockdowns and we were not engaging in a normal way with our customers, we did a very good year. We are 11% growing in respect of last year. We could launch 2 products even without seeing our customers by using the remote channels. So in a very successful way. So, and I think we, step by step, we adapted to this new way. And now we are at an average of more than 1,000 video calls a month. And we did, I would say, over 50,000 phone calls as well. So people start really to embrace this new way, this new technology, as it is a normal way of contacting people. And I think that is one of the successes of the Reset program, is that it's very, it feels very natural. And I think, as Mehrnaz already said, we are focusing on quality and not on quantity. And that's why we have integrated these sessions where people could exchange tips and tricks to each on what works well, what is not working well. And we also learn people, when they engage remotely with their customers, that maybe they first need to ask how these people are, how it has been for them in these difficult times. And that reduces a lot the tension. So people are more open to use that tool, and it reproduces more and more, I would say, the normal face-to-face chemistry so far. So I must say, in Norgine, we have been quite successful in embracing the whole remote engagement journey, and we will continue, because it never will stop. We say to the people, in the future, it will become a part of your normal life, whether it's 20, 30, or 40%. And we see differences. We see, for example, in Northern Europe, that maybe due to accessibility, limited accessibility with customers, their remote is embraced as replacing in person. In the Southern Europe, where we see a lot of engagement, where I would say the Mediterranean people are used to use WhatsApp, social media, they are very attached to their phone, to their devices. There they use it easily as an add-on to the in-person contact. So to be honest, we see it as a kind of making our life more richer. And due to the fact that we can use remote, we have a lot of other benefits that come into our world. So people are really liking it.
Koen, thank you very much. It's very encouraging actually to hear how it has been adopted by Norgine and how successful the organisation has been since. We'd like to move now to some Q&As. I want to thank everyone who has been involved and submitted their response on Slido. Thank you very much for voting. Now, I'm just going to go to Slido now and look at the questions. We have a question here, which I am going to put to you, Sebastien. What do you feel is the best practical tool for measurement of sales force effectiveness and digital maturity?
It's a very good and interesting question. I'll try to give you a kind of quick answer, because we could speak many hours about this, I believe. So let's see. I think Koen, but also Clare and Mehrnaz already gave some insights on this. Look, first of all, if you start with digital remote engagement, or if you're still in this process of trying to understand where you want to go with your field team, really put the focus on the quality instead of quantity. Yes, you want to make sure that your people are using digital and remote engagement, but you don't want to impose, I think, some kind of quota, high numbers, because it won't make sense for them. You need to make sure that this is something that will bring a habit also with them. So is it something you want to check on a monthly basis? Probably yes, in Europe. But don't ask to do, as I heard sometimes, 5 or 10 on a daily basis. Even 1 on a daily basis may be a lot. It will depend on your specialties, it will depend on your target. So make sure that you just bring this positive attitude and mindset, and people will just take this habit of doing it because it makes sense, also for them and for the healthcare professionals. I think this is the first thing. Once you've done that, I think it's important to also make sure, and it's about digital maturity, because you want to start with quality. You want to understand also where your doctors are going and their preferences. And this will help you also to have some KPIs of metrics that will help you measure also success. Once you've done that, I think it's also about how you want to move forward into digital maturity. And this is something we discussed, right? When you initiate this kind of new initiatives and technologies and digital remote engagement, it's all about technology first. Then you realize that it's not enough. You think about the skills, you think about the mindset. This will be more about how you want to establish this as a real channel instead of just starting a technology. Then you will think about how you want to optimize, right? How do you bring all the channels together? Koen was mentioning it's about remote engagement, but it's also about the phone, it's about chat, it's about WhatsApp sometimes, or other tools, right, or channels. how do you put this together to make something that makes sense, a whole story for your customers? And this is when you start really thinking about the content and the messages you want to bring to your customers, to the healthcare professionals. It will help you. And then your digital maturity will be already quite high in that case. So I would say go step by step. It takes time, but make sure that you don't try to go right away to the final step, because you really need to understand the learning curve and the learning process, to make sure that your teams, you will get the buy-in also internally from your teams. This is important.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Sebastien. And thank you to everyone who is continuing to vote on Slido. Thank you for getting involved. We have another question here that has come in, and we want to put this one, I think, let's go to Clare for this. How to avoid digital exhaustion of HCPs, especially after returning to face-to-face activities?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a tricky one for our HCPs, but for all of us as well, when we're sort of managing face-to-face life and digital, and we haven't had to necessarily do that before. At the beginning, it was one or the other. I think it's a couple of things that we need to focus on. So one is just making sure, if we are in the role of contacting an HCP, one, that we're doing a really good job of making sure that what we do is focused and relevant and adds value for them. So, we really need to avoid spamming people, and this is where we need to get really good at the targeting and the personalization. So really understanding our customers, understanding what they need, and then almost having that Venn diagram where we can then add our value into that mix, and being very focused and very targeted about how we interact with them. And then I just think on an individual level, it's also just a new approach to your mindset and planning, isn't it? So we can't control what the HCP does in terms of their planning, but for all of us, it's a challenge then to navigate digital and face-to-face together. And again, I think it's a case of we are all learning and adapting, and our HCPs will learn and adapt to manage that as well. But I think what we can control is the relevance and the focus of the contacts that we have with them, and also get that clarity about which of the channels do they prefer, and trying to do our best to match our messaging, but also the channels we use with what our customers are looking for.
Claire, thank you very much for that. Now, we do have a question here, and I'm not sure whether to give this one to yourself, Koen, or to come back to Claire. So you can let me know if this suits you. But thank you for upvoting this question. Senior leadership buy-in is one thing, but how do successful organizations gain the buy-in from field employees in using technology? Koen, can you take that one for us?
Yes, can you repeat the question, Zara? Because
yes, of course.
I lost you.
Of course, senior leadership buy-ins is one thing, but how do successful organizations gain the buy-in from field employees in using technology?
Yeah, and I think it's a good question, because we struggled as well, but not struggling as well with that one, but we had to consider this as well, because people, of course, preferred the in-person contact as this what they had used to do. So they were used to it, so they wanted to go back to their safe harbor and safe world. We explained to, and we could see it for, I would say, successful commercial people really understood quickly the advantage they could have in using this remote technology in the best of ways, because they could save time, they could save energy, they could avoid traveling 200 or 300 kilometers to a far distance hospital by using this, I would say, remote engagement tool. So we tried to reproduce how successful you can be if you really blend in that remote engagement tool in your pattern of engaging with your customers. And we also could show to some people the saving of time, but also besides that, also the sustainability factor. So where we say to people, you want to have a greener image, this is your opportunity to do your bit as well. But people that really plan very well in their region, their contacts by using the digital channels, they really were much more performant than the average rep that just randomly used it without really thinking before he started to engage with customers, whether he would do that in person, whether he would do that as a remote call. So we really started to ask to people, do you really think if you would run the business like you own it, would you travel 300 kilometers, or would you prefer to do a remote contact? And people having that mindset yeah, we got to the plan, or to the level, I would say, that people really start now to plan even before, where they would used to do an in-person contact. They start to say, this one I can do remote, because it saves me time. It's, as I would say, professional as an in-person contact. Maybe sometimes it's even better prepared than an in-person contact. So we're starting to see the benefits, but we had to show it with good results and exchange best practice. So some people, we started to let them give a testimony to their colleagues how well they could use this remote engagement tool prior to something else. So that's how we tried to really make publicity for remote engagement in Norgine as well.
Koen, thank you very much. And you were the perfect person to come to, having implemented this yourself. But today we've heard a range of opinions and ideas. We've discussed how the salesforce will typically react to change. Some about the technology, and that was actually the easier component. It's really the shift in mindset and different patterns of behavior. We heard from Mehrnaz about the requirement for a roadmap to behavioral change. And of course, we heard from Koen there about how Norgine has overcome that resistance. Now, we just have time for one last question that I'm going to ask very, very quickly to each of our speakers. Now, the final question is, what really is the one thing from an organizational, cultural perspective that you suggest needs to be addressed to support digital transformation? And let's go to Sebastien first for that one.
I would say, if it's just one word, it's all about patience. You need to be patient. You need to make sure that you really work closely with all the people internally to make it happen.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Claire?
I would say mindset. So really having a positive vision, a positive direction, and getting everyone aligned with the right mindset and helping them from wherever they're starting, because we're all different. So don't expect everyone to change at the same time.
Claire, that's great. And to Koen?
Yeah, I already could scrap mindset and patience of my list, so I have to find another word. Digital creates a lot of opportunities to review the way you were interacting with your customers. So it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to re-question why you are doing this job and how you can do it even better in a fast evolving world. And it's full of challenges, but especially opportunities, I see.
Wonderful. Thank you, Koen. And last but not least, Mehrnaz.
I would say when we're going through ambiguity, we tend to get really busy doing. My suggestion is take a step back and think about what is it that you desire to achieve in terms of digital transformation for your teams and for your organization. And look to see what you've been doing. If what you've been doing is taking you a step closer to where you want to be, great, just continue doing that. But if what you've been doing is not taking you a step closer to your goal, there's no point repeating it, right? Instead, you need to look at solutions that takes you a step closer to where you want to be and ensure they are engaging, credible, and easy to implement.
Mehrnaz, thank you very much. Now that does bring us to the very end of our session. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope that you have felt this rich connection to some possible solutions for your Salesforce as we move forward and navigate the future ahead of us. I just want to say a big thank you to our panel, Sebastien, Noel, Clare, Bryant, Koen Janssens, and Mehrnaz, Campbell. And also thank you to you for joining the webinar. This was Digital Transformation, Getting Your Salesforce to Embrace the Technology on Their Journey to Omni-Channel Engagement. We do hope you've enjoyed the session. Now the team will send you post-webinar communication and of course give you the opportunity to watch the replay afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.